Okay. Hello, Mick.
Hi, Ciaran. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Have you been keeping out of trouble? Been a
No.
few days. Glad to hear it. Wouldn't expect anything less. Well, yeah, I should explain. So this is our first podcast, sort of fully post-trial, I suppose. Paul Healy is, I believe, sunning himself in the Bahamas at the moment. No, he's just off today. So it's just myself and Mick for your delight and delectation. And Mick, you had approached us about a story that you have today that was in the Irish Daily Star and is up now on the Irish Mirror website. Might just give us a brief précis of what that story is about.
Yeah, that's right, Ciaran. It's actually, I think it's quite a significant story. It is in relation specifically about a man called John Murphy, who is a former Garda superintendent who is currently serving, who became corrupt essentially, and is currently serving a 6.5 year sentence after he was jailed in October last year in the CCJ for possessing €260,000 worth of cannabis. So it was quite a bombshell story, and he's currently serving his sentence. However, what makes it more interesting is he was arrested on Tuesday by Garda from the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation as part of the wider investigation into Gerry the Monk Hutch. Now, as we know, the murder trial for Gerry Hutch, when he was charged with the murder of David Byrne in February 2016 at the Regency Airport Hotel, has concluded. That was for the Special Criminal Court, and the three judges led by Miss Justice Tara Burns are now considering that verdict. But there has been a separate and independent investigation into allegations that John Murphy, as I said, former Garda superintendent, was effectively working with the Hutch crime gang and Gerry Hutch. Now, listeners will remember, shortly before Gerry Hutch's murder trial started last year, we broke a story in the Star that he himself was taken out of prison and arrested, and he was questioned about the offence of directing a crime gang. So that was separate from the Regency investigation. The Regency investigation was a local investigation by Garda from the DMR North Division, which is Dublin Metropolitan North, which is based in Ballymun. That covers that area. This investigation into the organised crime investigation into Gerry Hutch and John Murphy has been led by the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation. So it's a sort of twin track investigation. The investigation has been done. The file has been completed in relation to the Regency. We know that Gerry Hutch has gone on trial. He denies the murder, but it's now up to the judges, as we keep on saying. But separate to that, this investigation has been going on for at least probably 2 years. And John Murphy was brought out of Midlands Prison in Portlaoise, where he's serving his sentence on Tuesday, brought to Dublin Garda station, and he was questioned on his links to the monk. So in other words, Garda believed that this man was criminally involved with Gerry the Monk Hutch. So that separate investigation is very close to ending. Garda did confirm that a man in his 60s had been arrested on Tuesday. I know that that's John Murphy, and they said a file is now being prepared for the Director of Public Prosecutions. So it's very, very significant. He's charged with murder, but now the guards are investigating Mr. Hutch for directing a crime gang. Now that is significant because the maximum sentence for directing a crime gang in Ireland, and it's very, very rarely used, is life in prison. So it's a very, very serious charge. So we know that Garda have been investigating these alleged links between the two men for 2 years. So I think we're coming close to the midnight hour, really, in relation to this investigation.
It's very interesting. I mean, there's a lot to take in. But
there really is. And I can give you just, it's not speculation. I'm going to give an educated guess on this. We know, listeners will know, that the verdict of the three judges in the Hutch David Byrne murder trial is expected on the 17th of April. We were told, and that could be earlier, but Miss Justice Tara Burns said 17th of April by the latest. I know that a file is now being prepared in the separate investigation into Gerry Hutch and John Murphy. I would not be surprised if one scenario was that the DPP looks at the file and directs that Mr. Hutch be charged with directing this crime gang. Now, I want to stress this. It's up to the judges. But if Mr. Hutch is acquitted of the murder of David Byrne, and it's a big if, he will be automatically walk free from that court. And one scenario for me is that Garda from the NBCI are waiting outside the court to arrest him for directing the crime gang and bring him back to court and charge him with that.
Mm.
So it really is important.
And just like a procedural thing, I suppose, is there anything stopping them from rearresting him while he's in custody at the moment?
No, I don't think so. I think, like he was, as I said, he was arrested in custody just before the trial started. Now, there's one technicality about this. Guards can't arrest somebody when they're in the custody of the prison service. So they have to apply to a judge for what's called a Section 42 warrant, which is permission to take a prisoner out of custody and then have him arrested and then brought to a Garda station. So that's what happened to Gerry Hutch. That was all done last year. Before the trial started, a couple of days before the trial started, he was brought to Rolandstown Garda station and he was questioned on suspicion of directing this crime gang. The same thing happened to John Murphy. So he was Section 42'd, brought out, taken from Portlaoise up to a Dublin Garda station and was questioned for a while. So there's nothing to stop the guards if, say, the DPP directs next week. Now, the file hasn't gone yet. It'll probably be going in the next couple of weeks, I'd imagine, because they're at the arrest stage, which is always the last stage, because you have all the evidence and you have to put it to somebody. So you don't arrest and then make your inquiries. You make your inquiries, gather your evidence, then do the arrest, and the arrest is to put the allegations to them. Okay, so that's where we're at. The arrests have happened. So, next stage is for the file to be completed, sent to the DPP to make a decision. DPP can take a week to decide, but I just have a feeling that, it will take quite a long time, and it could be April, it could be later, but
yeah,
depending on what, I don't think it's likely to be before, I don't think it's likely to be in March or February, I'll put it that way.
Okay, well, a little bit of time still to go. And I think it's probably best for all of us, audience and presenters and what have you, to remember that this is a slightly different investigation in terms of in relation to the Hutch trial, because obviously this is ongoing, so there are various things that we need to factor in. Just on a kind of slightly wider sense, I suppose, now, through pop culture and Line of Duty and The Departed and all sorts, we've kind of been accustomed to the idea of bank coppers, to coin a phrase. But obviously this is going to cause an enormous ruction within the guards, or would have done, I would imagine, before the story broke at the time. We might be able to give us a bit more info about that.
It certainly did. I have to declare an interest. I didn't know the man from Adam, I have to say. He retired. John Murphy, he's 62, but he's very, very well known within the guards. I'll put it that way. And, an awful lot of people are probably running for cover now. There are a lot of people that are running for cover now. I mean, let's not beat about the bush. But he was very popular. He was very well got within the guards, and an awful lot of guards liked him. And that has to be said. Things have turned out different. But when he was in the job, an awful lot of people liked him, and he was very, very, very popular. He went down a different road. But I'll put it this way. What happened with John Murphy was seismic within the guards. I remember totally coincidentally. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I can tell you exactly when it happened. It happened on the 29th of September, 2021. That's when Garda raided his house and found the drugs, €260 worth of cannabis, €260,000 worth of cannabis in his house. Now, the reason why that I remember it was the 29th of September 2021, because that is the same day that a certain Gerry Hutch was put on an Air Corsica plane in Madrid and flown to Baldonnel Casement Aerodrome in Baldonnel in South Dublin to be extradited to Ireland, where he was promptly arrested for the murder of David Byrne and brought to the Special Criminal Court. So it happened on the same day that Gerry Hutch was brought back, and it's funny the things you remember. I remember. We were encamped. Everybody knows we were encamped outside Baldonnel waiting for the plane to come. And I was talking to a contact, and we were going about how big a story this was about Gerry Hutch, because it was massive. It's part of the Regency, it's part of the Hutch Kinahan feud. It had been going on for years. It was the centre of our journalistic lives for years. And one contact said to me, Mick, Gerry Hutch, there's a bigger story about to break. And I went, what are you talking about? What could possibly be bigger than Gerry Hutch being brought back to Ireland on an Air Corps plane to be charged with murder? And I found out an hour later when we got a bit of a sniff about a retired superintendent being arrested for possession of drugs. And that was John Murphy. So I can remember being absolutely stunned. And guards, I know the guards all around the country, because John Murphy, as I say, you'd be surprised. I think people outside the guards don't really know this, how many guards, each individual Garda knows. You're talking thousands. They will have served with them together. They will have been on investigations with them. They will have been in separate units or the same units. They will have studied together in Templemore. So throughout your career, you go to, I would say the average guard probably knows 2,000 or 3,000 other guards, right? And it's a web of everybody knowing each other. So it really was. He was very well known. I know that he served in Dublin. He served in traffic. He served in the Bridewell. He served in. So I cannot overstress how well known he was within the guards. And it was an earthquake. It was just a total earthquake. People were completely shocked by this. Now, that earthquake got even bigger because there have been 2 other Gardaí put under the microscope or spotlight, I suppose, because of this. And just a few weeks ago, as part of this investigation about information being leaked allegedly to the Monk and the Hutch crime gang by Murphy. A couple of weeks ago, another guard officer was arrested as part of this probe. So, it's the reverberations of that arrest and the reverberations of this investigation, I think, have been felt within the guards at every level and will be for quite some time. So, but it's just interesting. Gerry Hutch was arrested before the trial started late last year. The other guard was arrested a few weeks ago over this investigation, and then John Murphy was arrested now. So you can see that things are starting to speed up. So we are at that phase where the file will be sent and there will be decisions. But just getting back to Murphy, I think he retired around 2010, 2011. Look, I hadn't heard him. I hadn't heard him, didn't know the man at all. My only knowledge of him came was there was a massive retirement party for him, huge. And they booked I won't say which venue it was, but there was a big venue booked for him. And they came from everywhere for it. It was a real big bash. So that's when I first heard of it. Oh my God, because I'd never heard of such a big party for a retiring guard. So he had been working in the private field. He got into serious debt. We know from the court that he got into debt of more than €800,000 because of various problems and everything. And his family stuck by him. Testimonials from brother and family and other members. So it's very hard. Obviously, it's very hard for them. It's a terrible case. It's very hard for guards who would have been close to him. But it is seismic what has happened, and we're not finished yet because, as I have said, I think there will be further ramifications, and I think it's distinctly possible that Gerry Hutch will be charged over this, and John Murphy will be charged over this. I know the guards want them to be charged, but it's not their decision. It's up to the DPP. But we will have a decision within months.
It's interesting that you mentioned the debts there, because from my amateur research via Line of Duty, the one of the things that the police forces do seem to look for is debts incurred by serving guards, because obviously it puts them at risk of being exploited, I suppose, by potential criminal gangs or individuals, or whoever it might be, blackmailing, etc., or just doing crimes of kind of gain. Do we know much about the practices and the sort of the organizations that work within the guards to prevent corruption within the ranks? Like, are there specific units, for example, that would be dedicated to this kind of practice?
Yes, there is a recent. I'd say it was set up within the last 18 months, the anti-corruption unit, and that's been set up specifically to root out corruption. So they have a national remit, and one of the things they do is look for bent coppers, and so their nickname, everybody calls them AC12, and most of them, I think that's what their name is, but it's not. It's obviously the AC2. Obviously AC12 is from Line of Duty, but so it's quite a large operation, and it is their job to go out. Now look, you also have there's the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, who also investigate allegations of corruption, and and have for several times. So, but the main one now is mostly shifted to the ACU, and there's a I think they're a headquarters unit under the direction of senior officers there. So they have been, and they will continue to work on. I mean, I know of several cases. I mean, there's one case we did a while ago, but a serving Garda is under investigation for allegedly paying a criminal €300 to attack another Garda's house. So that case was investigated locally because there was a criminal aspect to it, that a criminal was traced for carrying out the attack. But then it soon became apparent that there was evidence linking the criminal to another Garda. So that has now been transferred to the ACU or AC12 in Dublin, and they're investigating that separate to the sort of criminal aspect of the criminal who attacked the house. There are loads of investigations that we'll never get to hear about. They're a busy unit.
It's very interesting. I do find this area of policing very, very interesting indeed, because I remember one of my other TV pleasures is 24 Hours in Police Custody, and they had this episode where they were doing a blackmail investigation. A guy had been blackmailed after he visited a sex worker, and with all the jigs and reels, it turned out that it was one of the police officers actually operating on the job that was
I remember that.
responsible for it. Yeah, but it was a great show, and it was fascinating, and it was really edgy seat stuff. But I do remember Bedfordshire Police at the end of that. I think he got 18 months originally, and Bedfordshire Police actually appealed to the court to say this is not long enough. Like, we can't allow serving officers who are engaged in this kind of activity to be seen to get away with it. And I think that's actually really interesting, in that how you police your own is a real indication of what the health, I suppose, of any police force is. And I'm not drawing any direct comparison with what's going on with John Murphy, because frankly, it's an ongoing case. We don't know what's happened, but it is interesting, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and you know, in my time in the Star, 23 years next month, I've covered several cases of guards who have been charged with criminality, serious criminality, trying to procure children for sex. Another one, these are just ones off the top of my head. Another one, accessing child abuse material, child sexual abuse material, what is legally called child porn, child pornography, but it's child images of child abuse. There's loads of them, and there's lots of guards have been investigated. Lots of guards have been prosecuted, and people linked to the guards have been prosecuted as well. And I have to say, and I'm being honest, there's no benefit to me to lie. In all the cases I've covered, it's as if the guards turn on the wrongdoer. You would sort of expect, God love him, all right, or her, she messed up, or he messed up, and blah, blah, blah. It's a visceral anger, right? And they go after them. This is my experience of covering cases like this and speaking with people who hunted down rogue guards, whatever you want to call them. There's no sympathy for them, and it's as if they regard them as traitors to the job, and they go after them with gusto. They really, really do. Some people might think, the guards cover for each other. When there's criminality, the cases I've covered, the guards go for them big time. And I've never heard, I've probably covered, maybe more than a dozen. I'd be confident more than a dozen serious cases. Every case, it's, fuck them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, pardon my language, that's basically it.
No, I mean, I think they realise the gravity of it more than anyone, and I think it's very important they do. Just to come back briefly then to the John Murphy investigation, or at least the mooted investigation. Do we know much more about the nature of the alleged links? Like, I realise that you've obviously intimated this information, and of course, it's an ongoing investigation. Do we have a sense of where they're looking?
It was intelligence.
Okay.
And it was intelligence on things like cars, details about Garda investigations, details about suspect, really, really sensitive stuff. And that sort of stuff. So
you don't need to go much further, by the way. If
that's
enough.
You need to be careful what we say. But look, the allegation is there was significant intelligence was accessed, and the Hutch gang got that. That's the suspicion.
So this obviously begs the question that I suppose other incidents of similar nature having happened. Are you familiar with any other incidents, maybe between Kinahans, for example, and serving police officers or anything of this nature? Or
somebody asked me a message on Twitter about Kinahans, and see, look, I'm sure there may have been, but I just off the top of my head, I can't think of any. No, I might be proved to be completely wrong, and our listeners I've got a fantastic memory, but I've been thinking about it for a while, and I just can't think of any. Not a, not a, not a
I
typical
can hear the
disciplinary.
hive mind of our listenership
Oh
tweeting you
yeah,
as we speak.
that's me boost.
But listen, I mean, this is obviously an ongoing investigation. It's very sensitive. So, listen, thank you very much. Is any other business before we move on to?
No, just Paul's obviously having a few days off. He worked his head off on the trial. We are, and you'll know this, we are determined, or we do of a mind to keep the pod going. So obviously the Hutch trial is finished. This was sort of about the Hutch trial, but it's more about the other aspect of the investigation that I spoke about. We do, I think we have decided, me, you, and Paul, that we are going to keep the pod going. It's going to turn into a sort of general podcast, crime podcast, because we can't talk, there's no trial to talk about. So, we have our own ideas. We've already got a couple of pods sorted, but we are keen to hear from listeners. Look, they might want some things explored. There might be some things that they want us to talk about. They may want to pick our brains or whatever. And we do really value the listeners. So we'd encourage, if anybody wants any areas explored, and we'll also be, please contact us. And, the connection we have with the listeners is very strong. But it's one thing we're looking forward to. And we're going to be doing things like, we might just do a general pod, stories we've been involved in that week, because we do an awful lot of stories every week that haven't been part of the podcast yet. So it's something we're very, very excited about, and we should be doing more of these in the coming weeks.
That's the hope. That's the hope. Mick, well, thank you very much for your time in the meantime, and thank you to Paul for wherever he is. But yeah, we'll be back with you in the next few days. So stay tuned, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Ciaran.